What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Planet Soccer Podcast. It is the morning of the Newcastle defeat of Tottenham. We just recorded that episode. That's a pretty cool coffee mug, actually.
I know, right? We got Bruno in the middle.
Also, it's pretty updated.
Isak in attack.
Yeah.
Isak somewhere on here.
Not bad. But we're not talking about that again.
Yeah.
Thank God. Today we're talking Wrexham AFC, the newly promoted Wrexham AFC. Welcome back to the Football League, to our friends from Wales. Dylan, this is a Hollywood story written by Hollywood superstars to the dismay and disgruntlement of many people in Europe, but to the happiness and joy of many people in America. You know, Americans, we love our streaming services. We love our TV. We love watching Hulu about as much as Brits love avoiding the dentist. We do it religiously, and that is why Wrexham. That's why Wrexham AFC has become such a popular team here in the U.S. If you don't have a Premier League team, you are probably a Wrexham fan if you have a soccer team. Even if you don't, I looked at Wrexham's followings on Instagram, and like my boss's wife follows Wrexham AFC on Instagram. And like, I know for a fact that family does not follow soccer at all. So that kind of gives you a good example of what exactly this club, where they stand in America. And today we're going to talk about kind of why their promotion and their success has been so widely contested, I think, depending on who you ask and what Twitter accounts you follow. I know Mark Goldbridge, the very prominent Man United Twitch streamer, just absolutely hates the Wrexham story. But of course, we love it. I don't even think Nick is a fan of the Wrexham story, and I get it. I get why these people aren't. It's because they're a threat. They're a threat to the status quo, and they're a threat to English football in some really roundabout ways. Go ahead.
And for me, that's like what's kind of exciting though is the fact that it is especially for our show and for the growth of soccer in America. If you live in America and you love the sport, I don't fully understand. Like, yes, I get it's a threat to the status quo, but I don't get how you can't enjoy or be in favor of the story as a whole and the situation as a whole. Because, like you said, your boss's wife who doesn't follow soccer is following Wrexham,
yeah.
and that's how we grow the sport in the U.S. And I think and validly so. That might be why. I think a lot of people in Europe and in England are against it, because it is a threat. It is bringing in these new fans. You and I, we were around soccer before Wrexham, but it brings
we
in.
We weren't around before Wrexham, because Wrexham's an old football club. But I know what you mean.
Well,
I know what you mean.
We were around before the Wrexham story.
The
we liked the sport before the Wrexham story. But as American fans of the sport, though, there's nothing better right now for the growth of the game in the U.S. because it's getting soccer on American televisions. It is the Ted Lasso, if you will, as well.
Yeah,
it's
like the real life Ted Lasso.
It's growing the game in the States.
Yeah, it's the tangible Ted Lasso effect in many ways. You see the clips. Ryan Reynolds, I'm going to look up how many Instagram followers he has, but like the influence that guy has and that Rob McElhenney has, it's something that very casual, just United States pop culture people are getting behind because of the owners. And like it or not, they have poured a ton of money into Wrexham. I think Ryan Reynolds has 50 million followers on Instagram, and he's pretty much his last 10 posts have been about Wrexham. So that's 50 million predominantly American
right.
eyes that have been on.
It's either Wrexham or ripping on his spouse.
Yes. Yeah. So here's the situation. They came in 2021. They bought the team from the supporters trust, essentially the fans, who I believe it was 2011. They the fans had to basically raise like 200,000 pounds or 100,000 pounds in like 7 hours to save the club. Basically, they like owed rent or something on the stadium uh, to whoever owned it, and the fans came in and bought the club, and then we're essentially in financial dire straits again in 2021. And Rob and Ryan came in and bought it. And go watch Welcome to Wrexham on Hulu if you want to know the full story. But essentially, this is such a hot topic because of the money they poured in. They have the salary equivalent of a championship side, like they're a low championship side, high League One side, um, and that's pretty controversial. I mean, they ran through the National League this year. Notts County put up an incredible fight, so shout out to them. But it was always going to be Wrexham, I feel like, this time around, and especially after their heartbreak last year in the National League playoffs. They really came in and they ran train through the league this year. So, what do you think is at kind of the core of the disgruntlement among mainly English fans of this Wrexham system?
I mean, it's the same disgruntlement that is surrounding the disdain for Newcastle right now. It's new money. It's disrupting the big sides, and like you said, if you're a true diehard English football fan, it's disrupting the norm, because it is this new money that is American money, which I think has like it or not, has a lot to do with it. They don't like seeing two Americans buying a club willy nilly on
It's kind of a
whim, if
publicity
you will,
stunt.
because it was. I mean, I not so for Ryan Reynolds. I truly believe, and if you watch Welcome to Wrexham, it very much seemed like it was a more of a publicity stunt for Ryan Reynolds than it was Rob McElhenney. Rob McElhenney had some ties to UK and to football. Like, there were some reasons he wanted to buy Wrexham, and he literally like called up Ryan Reynolds, like, "Hey man, I could use some extra money. Like, let's go buy a football club." And Ryan Reynolds was like, yeah, sure, we can." And if you watch the first, 3 or 4 episodes, like, Ryan Reynolds has no idea what he's getting into. He has no idea what he's bought into. It was purely a publicity stunt. Like, he didn't get it, but now, and that's a reason I love it as an American fan, because now he has put himself in a position he has to care about it, and now that he does, he has completely fallen in love with it. And I think that's where a lot of newer American soccer fans could likely relate. Like, yes, the UNIs of the world are not gonna spend millions of dollars on a club, but like, you can just fully throw yourself at a club or at a team or at the sport as a whole and fall in love with it. And that's what I've seen Ryan Reynolds do, and that's where it kind of hits home in a weird way, because I was like loosely a Newcastle fan before. Like, I was a Mario Balotelli fan, so I followed Man City for a little while at the start of their money spending spree, and I, in COVID, wanted a sport to just fully throw myself at, and that's where I've talked about it before on the show. Like, that's where I fully decided to throw myself at Newcastle, without the money being spent, obviously, that he has spent. But it in a lot of ways, it is similar. It was like, hey, I want something to care about. I want something to fall in love with, and he did it in a little bit of a Hollywood sense, a Hollywood way, and threw money at it, but it does say a lot about the sport, because he didn't know what he was getting into, and now he has completely fallen in love with the game.
Yeah, and I think the threat of more of an American audience on the sport is obviously something that's always at the back of the world's mind, and that sounds obviously very American centered coming from me. But when the U.S. played England in the World Cup this previous year, they expected to beat us 3-0, and they didn't. And every time the U.S. and England play and England doesn't get their way, it's like, well, this is like what we pride ourselves on, and it's America's fourth favorite sport, like, and it's not going to be
Right.
for long. It's creeping up there really, really quickly. Creeping up there is even the wrong word. It's skyrocketing up there. If you look at MLS numbers and the eyes that view the Champions League compared to the rest of the world. And it's funny, Wrexham's 15-year exile from the Football League, which essentially the Football League, it's the Premier League, the Championship, League One, and League Two. Then when you get down to the National League, it's outside of the Football League, but it's the last professional level. Once you get below the National League, it goes to semi-professional. So they were at the bottom of the barrel of professional football in England. And their exile coincided with the purchase of Manchester City in 2007, 2008. Manchester United had just won the Champions League. The Thai prime minister had all of his assets frozen in England, kind of similar to Chelsea's situation with Abramovich and the Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed came over, took over Man City that year, never looked back. And 15 years later, here we are with these two just American. I mean, Ryan Reynolds plays a comedy superhero, and that's kind of like that's a perfect encapsulation of who he is. So it's the timing of it is all very Hollywood, just to go along with that theme. And they have their superhero. They have the Paul Mullin, who's I saw a lot of talk this year, this really in the last 24 hours, like how many goals would Paul Mullin bag in the Premier League, and people just like trashing it in the comments. And I get it, like the National League is nowhere close to the Premier League, but he was League One's top scorer 3 years ago. Like, it's not like he's some bottom of the barrel.
He's not a nobody.
Yeah, he's not a nobody. He was. I think he would do fine on a Southampton. I think he could get 10 goals in the Premier League. And he's legit. Like, he's going to lead League Two in scoring next year. He got 40 in the National League this year, 40 plus. He'll get 30 in League Two next year, I think. They're here to stay. I don't know what Wrexham's ceiling is as far as how high they can get in the Football League system. I think that they'll likely, once they get there, spend a considerable amount of time in the Championship. I think it takes them probably 5 years to get to the Championship from this point. I think you finish League Two, mid-table, maybe not 5. I'll go 3. I don't think they get promoted.
Yeah.
They might get promoted from League Two next year. They just since those top 2 teams automatically get promoted, which is why the National League is so tough, because only that team that wins it automatically gets promoted, and the other 4 or 5 have to go through the playoff. But in League Two, the top 2 get promoted. So Wrexham last year, under that system, would have been promoted to League Two. I don't think they win League One right away, though. I think maybe they might have to spend 2 years in League One, and then once they get to the Championship, I think they can be there to stay for a while. It'll be really tough to get to the Premier League, but I think being the only Welsh team, I think they're the only Welsh team in the football system now. I could be completely wrong on that, but they're definitely the most high-profile Welsh team in the football system. And I've seen things where, I saw a rumor that Gareth Bale would be willing to come out and play a year for Wrexham in League Two, which would just be stupid. But things like that, the Welsh fans and Welsh players are getting behind Wrexham, and you've got guys that would probably be willing to play for them. And Wales made the World Cup, so they're not void of talent. I just see nothing positive coming out of this for the English fans, and a lot of positives coming out for Wales and for America.
Yeah, and I think you're completely right. And I do think it will be a 10-year project to get to the Premier League, if getting to the Premier League. But I do see them advancing relatively speaking, quite quickly to the Championship. I do think that the money will be spent, money in League One and League Two. If they're spending Championship money will go very, very far in League One and League Two. So I do see them being very successful in getting to the Championship, but that final push to the Premier League is so difficult
Mm,
and so beyond anything that we've seen a side like Wrexham achieve, like ever,
yeah.
in the
Luton
scope
Town is,
of the Premier League.
yeah. Go ahead.
No, Luton Town's a phenomenal example. Like
Yeah.
I have every year for the last 2-3 years always pulling for them, because when you look at their stadium and you look at the club and the community aspect of it, it's very exciting. But at the end of the day, that money just is not there to get them to the Premier
But they
League,
could be next
and
year.
they
They're sitting in
have
third, which is
rat.
crazy.
Yeah, this is the same thing I did last year. Don't, but that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like in your head, it's like, oh, it is attainable because they are sitting in third. They're going to go to the playoff. Like it could happen, but it's just not going to happen. That Premier League push is just so different than anything you experience in League One, League Two, or the Championship. And I do see that being a point where Wrexham will likely struggle for a few years, regardless of the American money, regardless of whatever they're able to bring in, even if they can bring in a Gareth Bale for a year or two. Like we're just not going to see them really compete with the Burnleys of the world
Yeah.
or the Watfords of the world. Like there are, as much as we love Wrexham, there are bigger clubs in England, in the UK, that will have the resources and the history and I'm
The
struggling to
DNA to,
the DNA. Yeah, no,
yeah.
exactly. To actually get it done, and that's where money can only go so far. Like we see it with Man City even. Like yes, they've had an influx of money over the last, what are we at, 15 years now
Mhm.
almost. We've seen a huge influx of money, and they still haven't won a Champions League. Like money does not solve all
Yeah.
problems, and that's where like Man City winning the Champions League is almost like Wrexham trying to gain promotion. It will take a long time when you are in the doldrums, when you are just been so void of success for so long. Like yes, they will win League One or
Oh,
League
Dylan,
Two
we
or
know.
both in the
You and I
next.
both know.
We know. Well, we Newcastle, we have not had money
Yeah.
spent in 15 years until the last year or two, and we're still seeing, like, yes, we battered Spurs today and won 6-1, which was great. I had to plug that one more time. But we at Newcastle are still so far away from actual success, actual trophies, outside of maybe the odd EFL Cup in a year or two, possibly. But we're seeing that money does not solve all problems in football. You do have to have, as you said, that DNA,
Mhm.
and there are certain clubs. Well, Wrexham has some history and they have a great fan base. They just don't necessarily have everything that it will take to advance into the Premier League in the next 5 years. And I think that's something American fans kind of need to check themselves on. If you're following, Wrexham or Welcome to Wrexham, or you're trying to dive into it, like you have to be ready for 4, 5, 6, 10 years
Yeah.
of this struggle, if you will, because it is so hard to break into it. And at the end of the day, like England does kind of protect itself in a way when it comes to football. Like I'm not trying to say it's rigged against anybody challenging, but it there are systems in place and rules in place, if you look at financial fair play now, that you can't just splash cash at all problems and expect to
I
win.
don't think
Like
Wrexham will
you
have
will have to
financial
go
fair play
through.
issues for a while because of the money that they're bringing in. But I get what you're saying for sure. The Hulu money in itself, I think they're going to be secure on financial fair play for a while. But there are those
But
like 8 to 10 yo-yo teams, the Burnleys, the Sheffield Uniteds, the Bournemouths, the Nottingham Forest, the Middlesbroughs, that are always going to be that championship Premier League, and you have to truly break into that group. You can be a Luton Town or Luton Town, however you say it, that's threatening this year. They're going to make the playoff, but I mean they're going to have to beat Middlesbrough in the playoffs, or not Sheffield United, Coventry, or somebody that Millwall, somebody that just has more history and more of that winners Premier League DNA.
And looking at this year's relegation teams, I mean, we're going to likely see either a Leeds or an Everton or a Leicester get relegated, and then like Wrexham is just nowhere close to competing with those sides, regardless of the money.
It would have been really interesting to see Wrexham and Tottenham play in the FA Cup. I know Sheffield United ended up getting that draw, but that would have been a real like barometer on where Wrexham is. I think one very interesting thing before this gets too long to look at, they're in the Football League now, so they can sign international players. They can go sign an American or a Portuguese player or a Brazilian player. And I would be interested to see what kind of that young American talent that might have come up through MLS, if there's any sort of pipeline to get them into the Football League a little bit earlier, and to start that process a little bit sooner. I'm pretty sure that they couldn't do that when they were in the National League. I'm pretty sure you had to have UK players while you were in the National League, but now they can go and get those foreign players.
So, as you mentioned that, is there anybody specifically American speaking? Is there anybody off the top of your head? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Anybody that you think
Caden Clark
would be a good fit?
Caden Clark would be one. I think he's bound for a little bit of a bigger move. I think he'll end up at like a Salzburg or something. But yeah, I'm sure there are like 17-year-olds that we don't really know. Like a Justin Shea might be too big at this point. Joe Scally, obviously way too big. He'll get a Premier League move, but just guys like the Scallies before they become Joe Scally.
Scally before he's Scally.
Before he gets to Gladbach.
And that's something that will be kind of exciting to see, and something I think Wrexham would be very smart to do to continue to grow in America.
Wrexham will set up an academy in America, like within the next 365
for the nerds like
days.
us. For nerds like us, like I need to see that. Yeah. Like I want to go watch some 17-year-old. I don't know their name right now, but I want to go watch some 17-year-old play for Wrexham in League 2 next year.
Yeah.
Like that will get me tuning in more than I already do. And I think that would be beneficial both on the field and off the field for a side like Wrexham, because in League 2, it is somewhat of a developmental league for those younger.
It's a loan out league. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that I think Wrexham will likely do. Like you said, I think there's a very good chance they continue to grow in America, whether it be academy route or whether it be academy level players that they sign. I think that'll be a really interesting wrinkle to the Wrexham project, if you will, is how do they take this next step? They've now qualified for League 2. They're out of the National League. Where do they go now, and how do they tie it into America to continue to get those American viewers?
Yeah, for sure. Wrexham, we see you, we love you, and we wish you all the best. Congratulations on your promotion to the Football League, and yeah, have a go at it. Thanks for watching, as always, guys. We appreciate it. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, duet, and stitch. Got that down now. And we'll talk to y'all next time. Have a great weekend.